a day after the Government of India announced its new recruitment scheme for the armed forces called Agnipath. It was announced, remember, by the Modi government and Defence Minister Rajnath Singh yesterday. The centre now says the scheme is aimed at providing a youthful image to the armed forces. The eligibility of the scheme, remember, is the age of 17.5 to 21 years. Candidates will be enrolled under respective service acts for the recruitment. Rigorous military training in existing training centres will be needed. The duration of the service, they say, is 4 years, including training. Only 25% of the recruits will continue with the service after their 4-year term ends. The remaining 75% will leave with Seva Nidhi adding up to 11 to 12 lakhs without pension once they retire from the service. But it has sparked off a fierce debate. Okay, joining us now as that debate is sparked off by the government's latest reform for the army is my next special guest. I'm joined by former army chief who led the Indian army during the Kargil War, General VP Malik joins me. Appreciate your joining us, General Malik. Where do you stand now on this debate, General Malik, that has been ignited by the Modi government's Agnipath scheme to reform recruitment in the army? 17 to 21 years, 4-year in a way duty. Some say it will lead to a younger and fitter army. Others are saying it could lead to a much less professional army with just 4-year terms. It will in a way disrupt the way armed forces function. Where do you stand on this increasingly polarized debate?
Good evening, Rajdeep. Thank you for asking me. I believe it's a step in the right direction. It's a pragmatic scheme, and it takes into account the socio-economic conditions of the country. It takes into account technological conditions that we will be facing in future, particularly in the nature of conflict and the kind of weapons and equipment that we will have to use. It also takes into account even the terrain on which we may be fighting. I'm referring to high altitude and the mountainous terrain, etc. So I believe it's a pragmatic scheme, and it's worth going in for it. In case there is any flaws or any noticeable weaknesses in that, they can be corrected. But on the face of it, it looks to be a pragmatic scheme.
You're calling it a practical and pragmatic scheme, General Malik. Let me now give you the views of those criticizing it. Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, for example, says anyone under the delusion that an intern on a 4-year tour of duty will match up to the Himalayan challenges and place the izzat of the Paltan before life and limb is clearly hallucinating. How do you respond to that? That this scheme of Agnipath, far from creating in a way these Agni warriors, it will actually affect the army's izzat. The camaraderie will be shaken if you have 4-year interns, as he calls them, suddenly joining the army tomorrow.
Very strong words, but Rajdeep, I have seen troops into the battle, fighting the battle. As you know, during Kargil War, we had a large number of troops who had come from the training centers, joined their battalions. We also had young officers who had just put in 2 or 3 years service. Some of them had been commissioned in the ASC, Ordnance, EME, etc. And they were on attachment with the infantry battalions which were there. They all fought well. They all fought for the regiment or the battalion for which they were. They all fought, in fact, many of them did commendable jobs. I can even mention the decorations some of them got. So I believe that it's we need not fear the kind of we need not fear about it, and these boys will be absorbed. The way the number will come into the be absorbed properly, and there is no need for us to worry that they will not abide by the Naam, Namak and Nishan.